I was at a friend's house on the new year of 1999, and she has a giant picture window in her dining room. I was spending the night, and we were the only ones awake. Her parents were asleep in the room, pretty much right next to us, and her brother and sister were asleep on the floor in the living room. We went over to the picture window to try and see the fireworks. We were trying to see them when we heard a clatter right above us. We looked up at the ceiling while hoping it was only rats. We ignored it and continued searching for the sky for fireworks. After about a minute, we heard heavy footsteps. They were horrible. After that night, she still comes to me with outrageous stories from the night before. One of them was not too long ago. She told me that she heard a voice one night while she was having trouble sleeping. She walked out of her room, looked down the stairs, and saw a dark figure standing at the end of the stairs. She thought it was her mom and started saying something to her, but it wasn't her mom. Not at all. She looked down the stairs closer, and then it opened its eyes. She says they were a bright glowing green. When she told me this, a bolt of pure, unspeakable terror shot down my spine. She also says that after she claimed she was in her room and she looked out her window, she saw in her little sister's room a blood red man looking right at her. She always has terrifying stories, and yet she is never scared or fazed by them herself. I remember in the 3rd grade, I was at her house every morning because I had seen strange figures in my hallway. Every morning, my mom would take me in, and I'd lay on the couch. As I watched her headlights dance across the wall and then disappear, the room would lower to an agonizing freezing cold. I guess I could chalk that up to coincidence, but knowing all the experiences I had previously and the ones that I just mentioned, I kinda doubt that. But I know that there is a presence in my house. Thanks for reading. My name is Ian, and I recently just spent 2 weeks in Italy. I live in LA and was told of the many must-see locations in the area of Tuscany, but the one that most appealed to me was the Torture Museum in the famous city of San Gimignano. On the 9th and last day in Tuscany, before I took my long drive home to Rome, we decided to stop in San Gimignano. My father told me to leave me in the Torture Museum, aka the Criminal Museum, while he went off with my sisters. The Criminal Museum was originally a torture chamber, built during the time of the Spanish and Italian Inquisition. I bought my ticket at around 5:30 p.m. and proceeded to the bottom part of the torture chamber. As I entered the deepest part of the chamber, I got really scared. I was all alone, except for a German man and his children. The chamber was quite odd, and in some places, it was really cold, and I would go back to that same place, and it would not be cold anymore. Light gusts of wind would come out of nowhere, and there were no windows, doors, and it was underground. I began proceeding through the chamber, until I was stopped by a ghostly figure, standing right behind an Iron Maiden. It was a shade of white that I had never seen before. I could barely make it out, but there were depressions where the mouth, eyes, and nose were. I stood frozen for what felt like 10 minutes. It then darted straight across the room, in the direction of the opposite wall. I could even hear its feet going across the floor. I ran like a bat out of hell, and nearly cleared 20 stairs, but fell and slid down the 10 other. I later spoke to the man in the reception room. He asked me where I saw it, and I said in the chamber. He told me that there are hundreds of ghosts in there, and many seem to be insane. I will never forget what happened to me in Italy, and I hope others will enjoy my story. My name is Julie, and I'm 32, mother of a wonderful 4-year-old son, which I would give my life for, married to a wonderful, incredible man. We live in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. When I was about 8, I believe, I had my first terrifying experience with the dead. My great-grandma had passed away a few days earlier, although I can't really recall the event all that well. One night, a few days after her death, I woke up in the middle of the night, needing to go to the bathroom. The bathroom was just in front of my bedroom, separated by a long hallway that went basically across the part of the first and only floor. Beside my bedroom was my parents' bedroom. My bedroom to the bathroom was only like 3 feet to walk across the hallway. As I walked towards the bathroom, for some reason, I looked into my parents' bedroom. What I saw terrified me. Across my parents' bed, I saw my great-grandma lying on her side, holding her head, with her left arm looking at me with these black, see-through eyes. I will never forget. Very young and innocent, I didn't really ever think that ghosts really existed. That made me aware of another world that we were not taught about in our upbringing. When I got a little older, we had bought a house in Hawkesbury, Ontario, that we stayed into for I would say 5 to 6 years. I was about 16 at the time. We had just purchased the house, and while my father was renovating the upstairs, the whole family would be sleeping in the basement. One night, as we were spending a little time together, we heard this funny noise upstairs. We thought someone, for some reason, had entered our home, so my father went up to see what was going on. To all of our surprise, all 4 rings of our ceiling light had just fallen on the floor. Not one at a time, but all 4. We could hear footsteps in the house, and when I was alone, the front doorknob would turn, and nobody was even there. I was so terrified. I did not know what to make of these events. At night, I would hear someone open the fridge door and close, open pantry doors and close loud. I would constantly feel a presence. I would barely have any sleep in the house. Sometimes, I would go and sleep with my brother. It is a terrible feeling as a child to be afraid like this. It's not okay. I don't think in any way that this is a funny thing. When you're a child, you get confused and don't understand the logic of these things. Actually, because there is no logic. When I got older in my early 20s, my grandmother passed away. God, I adored her. She was my best friend, and to this day, I miss her like crazy. Not long after she had died, maybe a few nights after, she appeared to me while sitting on the side of my bed, late one night. She appeared right next to me. She had her arm around my neck, and she looked at me saying, "Julie, don't be sad. You know that I'm not really gone." And she disappeared into thin air. I felt such a relief that she felt my sadness, and that she loved me enough to come and comfort me. I will never forget that precious moment. For you, Grandma, I love you. Julie. To start my story, my father and I pretty much had a decent relationship most of my life. Of course, when I was a teenager, I did the usual teenage crap and rebelled, and we grew apart. I had moved out and ended up with an abusive boyfriend. I ended up moving back home, and Dad and I renewed our relationship. Those 9 months before my dad's death were great. We actually got a chance to really talk, and I think my dad knew his time was short. He kept telling me that I would find the right guy eventually, and I would make a good mom someday. On February 11th, 1997, Dad passed away after a long illness that we would discover later was periodontitis. Things didn't start happening right away. It started after I met the man who would be my husband later, and I became pregnant with our son. About 4 months into my pregnancy, we started noticing little things around the house, mostly having to do with noises and objects that had belonged to my father. After my son was born, and he was about a month old, my husband and I were watching television in the living room, and the baby was asleep. My mother's room. We were staying with her. Due to after Dad died, she couldn't pay the bills on her own. Was right off the living room. She had went to bed, and after about a half hour, she said she had seen a white orb about the size of a softball traveling between the bedroom door and her vanity mirror. No light source constant. Her room was pitch black because she kept tinfoil and trash bags over her windows to keep the light out. Then, when we were getting things ready for the wedding, it seemed like all hell broke loose. Objects being thrown, kitchen drawers opening, and shutting by themselves, strange noises, you name it, we had it. Then, the wedding day came. I wasn't nervous, because I knew Dad was there. I wore his turquoise ring I gave him for a Father's Day present, for something blue. Everyone at the wedding and the reception said they could feel him. Even some of the pictures taken at the reception were questionable. A couple have what appears to have a mist in them. My son is in most of those photographs. Then we didn't really have anything happen for a while, until my son started getting old enough to talk. Then in the evening, when only me and my son were at home, watching TV most times, he would get all excited as if someone had just come home. He would run up to the baby gate, wave, and yell hi, and I would go up to the gate and look down the hall to see no one there, and I would ask him, "Who are you talking to?" And he would look up at me and smile and say, "Grandpa, Mama." He never met my father. My son was born on 2100, and Dad died on 2/11/97. After he did this for a couple of weeks, I invested in an EMF detector. After running a few test runs to get readings from the hallway on basic electrical outlets and whatnot, I waited for my son to say hi to Dad again. Sure enough, about a week later, it happened again. This time I ran into the hallway to see if I could get a reading. I did. A perfect circle about 2 feet in diameter, smack dab in the middle of the hallway. I knew it was Dad. We have since moved, but my son still says hi on occasion to Grandpa, and my sister and I can still sense his presence. I'm 19 now, and most of my experiences have happened recently, although I remember a few from when I was a child. I'm a student at a Big Ten university and stayed in the dorms my first year here. My roommate and I were soon to find out we had another roommate. One night, I was dreaming that I was lying in a bed across from another bed, and a girl was pacing in between. Well, my dream soon faded to reality when I noticed myself blinking. We had lost, so the floor that was in my dream was now gone, but the girl was still pacing, about 5 feet in the air. I don't know what came over me, and I didn't mean to say anything, but I blurted out, "What are you looking for?" The girl stopped and looked at me. Her eyes were just dark holes, and then faded away. I wasn't scared of her. I just went back to sleep. During other nights, I would be startled awake by what sounded like heavy books being thrown to the floor, and in the morning, nothing would be out of place. Things would go missing, only to end up in the middle of the floor, days later. My first touching experience took place there also. I was taking a nap on the futon with my boyfriend when I felt what I thought was my boyfriend's scruffy chin rub on my forehead. It woke me, but I didn't open my eyes. It happened again, and so I thought he was trying to get my attention. I looked up, expecting to see his face, and there was nothing there. He was about 2 feet away from me, with his back towards me, fast asleep. My roommate, however, had the creepiest experience. She rarely had any, but hers, I think, didn't happen to me. She came in the room from the shower, down the hall, and went to her mirror when she noticed she had a drop of blood on the tip of her nose. She wiped it off onto her finger, expecting to see a pop zit or something, but her nose was clear. She showed me the blood on her finger and told me what happened. So we checked her arms and legs, everywhere, to see if she had cut herself shaving. We checked her towel, robe, slippers, everything, and there was no blood anywhere else. We still do not know where it came from. Last night was my most recent experience, which made me want to read about stories online. It was at my parents' home, which we all think is haunted by some man. I was ready to fall asleep when I was startled awake by a loud pop in front of my face. Minutes later, I heard dripping water. That ghost mostly bothers my brother, whose bedroom is in the basement, where most of the activity takes place. I would like to share my experiences with someone who doesn't think I'm crazy. When I was 5 years old, my mom, dad, and I moved to a house in Crownsville. It was about 7 years old, and had originally been built as a summer home only. My dad did a lot to the house over the years to renovate it. When I was about 10 years old, he finished a new bedroom on the front of the house, and he and my mother moved in. I got their old bedroom at the back of the house. I'm not sure if this bedroom was on the house originally, because it was built on a concrete slab, and the rest of the house was over a basement. My mother claimed to see a ghost materialize from the heating vent into the room. We all laughed it off. Later on, I didn't think it was so funny anymore. My parents were very strict and didn't leave me alone in the house until I was 13. After they left, I was really creeped out by the feeling in the house. I felt as though I was being watched. I wandered into the kitchen and heard a really weird sound. Then I noticed that the cupboard doors were moving. It looked like they were vibrating. I recognized the noise. It's the glasses in the cabinets all vibrating against one another. I ran back to my room and stayed there till my parents got back. One time, I got this brilliant idea to bring a Ouija board into the house. My grandmother had lots of junk in her backyard, and as I dug around, I had found the board wedged between two small buildings. If I'd been a bit older and a bit smarter, I would have left the damn thing there. I shoved it into the back floorboard of my mother's car, underneath my jacket. Somehow, I snuck it inside later on, without being seen. It was just a board in the planches, the Parker Brothers kind. I put it in my underwear drawer, all the way at the bottom, hoping to play with it later. I had failed school that year, so I had to go to summer school. I knew I would have to get up early, so I went to bed early. I was wakened sometime later, after my parents went to bed. I thought I heard a rattling. I listened for several minutes, heard nothing, and went back to sleep. I woke up again, a little while later. Again, I thought I heard rattling, and this time, I thought it had come from my dresser. I was slightly freaked out, but I heard nothing after a few intense minutes of listening, so I rolled over and went back to sleep. I woke up a third time. This time, I was angry. I still heard it when I woke all the way up, so I hurried and turned my light on. I saw the dresser drawer move for a few seconds, then it stopped. There was no more sleep for me to be had that night. The light stayed on, and I stayed sitting up in my bed till dawn. Then I got into the dresser, snapped the board in pieces, and threw it out my back window. The last thing that happened, while I lived in the house, occurred when my best friend stayed the night. We were supposed to be sleeping in my bed, but being kids, we were up talking. We both shut up at once and looked out my bedroom door. It was the kind of house where all the doors line up. I could look out of my door and see clear to my parents' bedroom door. In between were my old room, the kitchen, and the living room. We both saw glowing orbs floating around in the living room. There were about 5 of them, and they were way brighter than any of the lamps we had. She and I stared in awe for a few minutes, and then they faded away. She and I are still friends, but we never have talked about the glowing balls floating around my living room. Thanks for listening. I have been able to explain what happened the night of the Ouija board rattlings. For all I know, it could be the workings of an overactive imagination, but it sure seemed to be real to me. The terror of that night never has faded. Hi. I've owned this large, 3-story, late 1800s building for the past 25 years or so. The first floor is 2 storefronts, and the second and third originally had 3 apartments per floor. I converted 2 of the second floor apartments into 1 large apartment for myself. When I first bought the building, I had a great deal of work to do on it. My mother would occasionally visit, and she would ask me who was in the back room of the main store. There was no one there, but she would insist. I never thought much about this until later in life, but she now sees non-existent people nearly everywhere. Sometime after gutting the building and making it partly usable, I was working on the first floor and saw a young boy running through the store. Since the place was locked up tight, and there were 7 alarm systems, and only 1 was off, it was impossible for the child to hide from me. No child was to be found. Over the years, I, and many others, I've seen a child running through the store. I've seen the occasional person while looking in a mirror, although this doesn't happen often. Many years ago, my friend Scott shared the apartment and had a rear bedroom of his own. One evening, he came out to see me when I got home and complained that something had sexually assaulted him. He found the event very painful. I somewhat dismissed this as folly on his part, but never forgot it. A few years later, I rented that same room to another fellow, and he had a similar experience. He moved out the next day. I rented a room to a fellow who was gay. He never had problems until his friend came over to visit. They were alone in the bed at the time. They were in the bedroom when the bed lifted a few inches off the floor and fell down. Then the bed moved a couple of feet from its location. Finally, the tenant had a set of barbells sitting on the floor. They were tossed up in the air several times, hitting the floor with a bang. After this happened, I began to read up on getting rid of spirits in the building. I placed a pentagram with proper symbols in the room above the tenant's room and went through the ceremony. From that day forward, nothing else happened in the building. That is, until the roof leaked above the room, and I bought up a tarp and bucket to catch the leak. The tarp covered the pentagram. Since then, people, including myself, see things in the building, mostly visions of people. Some people leave the building immediately when this happens. Over the years, nothing has ever happened to me physically, and my sightings of spirits are rare. I'd like to mention another place in Buffalo. It is on West Avenue, near Ferry. The location was originally Buffalo's hanging grounds, and now there are houses on it. My friend Paul owns the house. Occasionally, when no one is in the house, there will be loud screams coming from inside the house. Police have been summoned by neighbors on several occasions, but couldn't find anything out. Thanks for reading. This is Channel 7, Action News, reporting the news on almost a fake basis. Fake news for everybody. Jim, why don't you let us know what's going on in the news? Okay guys, so Phantom of Darkness just released a Phantom of Darkness video for narration, and everybody's clapping their hands and saying yeah. Other news. Other people have chopped off their hands because it's so freaking hot and there's no AC in this house that they go ballistic and they start crying. Now whoa Jim, what did you say about Phantom of Darkness channel? He just released a video. Really? How many likes, comments, and subscriptions did it get? I don't know. It's still pending. This video just released and nobody knows. Jim, did you even share the video? Oh, fuck! Oh, I just realized you're right. I should have shared the video. That's why it's not getting likes, comments, and subscriptions. Oh my gosh. Jim! Where are you? What are you doing? Where are you reporting? I gotta share the video. I have no time to talk. Jim, if you leave this news network once and for all, I will have you fired. Isn't that the point? Yeah. Okay, guys, that's the weirdest thing I've ever done in my life, but I'm basically using two actors and not differentiating between the voices, but whatever, it doesn't matter. Anyway, guys, you heard the news network. Go ahead and comment, like, share, and subscribe, and I'm done because it's really hot and I really need to stop looking at a laptop and I don't have any AC and I'm burning up and I really want to splash some water on my face. So guys, love you guys and see you in the next video. I told you I'd upload a video today and I would mess up. Bye.